in the unit that we're just about to finish up, we've talked about three things. We started by talking about microscopes. Then we moved on and talked about cells and cell organelles. Then we moved into a section that we called cell processes, like things that happen within cells. That's why we talked about osmosis and diffusion. And now we're going to finish up with two more cell processes called photosynthesis and respiration. And really it's just a couple slides of notes. Probably a lot of this is familiar to you already. And so we're going to talk about these things, and now we'll do a little review, have a couple worksheets, and then we'll have a quiz on photosynthesis and respiration on Wednesday. So you guys have heard of photosynthesis, and as we answered your question today, a lot of you had some idea about what photosynthesis is. And you probably would say it's how plants make their own food. And that's not wrong, but we're going to get into a lot more detail. Really, photosynthesis is a chemical reaction that happens inside certain living things. And so what we're going to do is we're going to learn about the entire chemical reaction, the sort of basic overview of photosynthesis. And so that's what we have here. When we're talking about a chemical reaction that takes place, we usually have some stuff on one side of an arrow, and then some stuff on the other side of the arrow. The stuff on the left tells us what is needed, what's put into this chemical reaction. So let's think about photosynthesis. What does it need in order to work? It needs three things. I'm sure you know a couple of them. Tatum, what's one?
Sun.
Yeah, it needs light. Now, often it's the sun, in nature obviously, but plants can grow in artificial light as well. So yes, photosynthesis, it must have light. Without light, photosynthesis can't happen. Haley, you got another thing?
Air.
Yeah, we're going to be a little more specific. Because air, when we say air, we mean it's a bunch of different gases that are around us. Hold on. So which of the gases that are in air do plants actually need for photosynthesis? Kendall?
Carbon dioxide.
Yeah, they need carbon dioxide. That's the gas in the air that plants use in photosynthesis. And they need one other thing. Is that?
Water.
They need water. So you can see here I'm using not words, but I'm using chemical symbols, we would call them. You guys all know water is H2O. And what these symbols mean, it tells you a little bit more about that molecule. So water is two atoms of hydrogen bonded to one atom of oxygen. That's what a water molecule is. Two hydrogen bonded to one oxygen. Carbon dioxide is one carbon bonded with two oxygen atoms. So H2O and CO2 are the symbols we use for those two compounds. Okay, so if there's light, water, and carbon dioxide, a plant can use those things, a chemical reaction takes place, and these atoms get rearranged to form two things. Does anybody know what does photosynthesis produce? We know now it needs those things. What does it make? Yeah? It's not quite. I mean, it stores, we could say it takes light energy and stores it in something else, but not quite energy. A molecule that actually has energy in it. So when you told me photosynthesis is when plants make their own food. And so what does that mean? What do they make? Falafel pita sandwiches? Veggie burgers? Tater tots? No, they don't make food like that. What is the actual food a plant really makes? It's one specific molecule. No, it happens in the chloroplast, Abby?
Seeds.
No?
Don't they make seeds?
What? No, but we're getting closer. So not protein. What are other nutrients in that group? Nope. It is a carbohydrate. It's a specific one. What's one type of carbohydrate? No. It's a sugar. And it's a specific sugar. If I asked you to name one specific sugar, I bet you could, Matt.
Starch.
Starch can be broken into sugar, but no. Glucose. Heard of glucose? So what they make is a sugar called glucose. It has a chemical formula, which is C6H12O6. That helps you remember the 6 from the carbon, the 6 from the oxygen come together to make the 12 for the hydrogen.
But we're gonna know that.
Yep. So it makes C6H12O6, glucose.
So we have to be able to write
Yep.
light plus H2O
Yep.
plus CO.
And it produces one other thing. It's a waste product of photosynthesis. It's a gas that is released. Oxygen. They release oxygen.
And that's the reason why we can breathe.
Yeah.
Wait, what's CO2 stand for?
Carbon dioxide. So photosynthesis happens in plants and a few other things as well. And they absorb energy from sunlight. They use that energy to rearrange the atoms of water and carbon dioxide to form two different molecules, glucose and oxygen. Now you should realize, what are the elements here? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Are they also over here? Do we have carbon here somewhere? Yeah. Do we have hydrogen? Yes. Do we have oxygen?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's the same atoms. They just got rearranged into a different shape. It's like if somebody gave you a whole bunch of small little Lego cars, and you undid all the Legos and used the same blocks to make a Millennium Falcon out of it. Well, it's the same blocks, they're just rearranged into a larger format. That's kind of what's happening in photosynthesis. These smaller molecules are being rearranged into larger molecules. And glucose has energy in it. Glucose stores energy. That when we say plants make their own food, what we're really saying is they make their own glucose. Okay? That's what photosynthesis is. When we talk about a chemical reaction such as this, the things on the left side of the arrow, we call the reactants. Those are the things that are reacting together, that are being rearranged. And on the other side of the arrow, we call those things the products of the reaction. So the reactants and the products. So what's the goal of photosynthesis? So the purpose of photosynthesis?
Well, isn't it like two? Like it keeps some plants itself alive and it creates oxygen.
Yeah, why does it keep the plants alive? Because it provides them with what?
It provides them energy.
With food that they're going to use for energy. So the goal of photosynthesis is to produce food or glucose, as we would say now, for the plant. Now, can we go through this process of photosynthesis? No. If we could, we would just go out in the sun and we'd be making our glucose, we never have to eat. But we don't. We don't have chloroplasts in our cells. So where do we get energy? Plants don't need to eat anything because they're making glucose on their own using sunlight. Where do we get? We still need energy. Abby? The foods we eat. We know the foods that we eat all eventually can be traced back to plants. Okay? So we get our energy by consuming other organisms to get glucose. All right, so that's photosynthesis. Related to photosynthesis is this other chemical reaction we call cellular respiration. Respiration for short. And if you know the chemical formula, the reaction for photosynthesis, respiration is pretty easy because it's almost the exact opposite. So in respiration, this is happening in all of our cells right now. Okay? It requires some fuel. And the fuel that it uses is glucose. C6H12O6. In their cells of our body, they're taking in glucose and they're using it for respiration. And it needs a gas. What gas do you think is needed here? Dana? Oxygen.
So it's opposite.
Yeah, it's almost the exact opposite. So in respiration, glucose is used, it's combined with oxygen, and it produces three things.
Like,
Okay? Now, those three things, this is the difference. So it's not the exact opposite of photosynthesis, because what would this be if it were the exact opposite? Light. Are we glowing?
yes.
No. Okay. So it doesn't produce light as an energy source. It produces something else. And this is something you probably have not heard of. It takes the energy that's in glucose and stores it in a different form that the cell can actually use. So as I walk around this classroom, my muscle cells that move me around are using energy. They need energy to make my limbs move. Okay? And so that energy comes from a specific type of molecule. It's called ATP. It stands for adenosine triphosphate.
If we wrote ATP on the test.
Yeah, that's fine. You don't need to know what it stands for.
Okay.
So that's what all of our cells must have ATP in order to stay alive. Okay? So this respiration is happening in all of the cells of our body to produce this energy we need. And it produces two waste products. What's one of them?
Garbage.
Two waste products. Kendall? Carbon dioxide? And? No?
Cl.
And water. Carbon dioxide and water are the waste products.
So it's pretty much the same thing.
It's almost the opposite, except instead of light, we have ATP.
If we don't write like up and down like H2O,
You should write them like that. So in our cells, we're taking in glucose as fuel. Okay? And changing it into a form our cells can actually use, ATP. It's kind of like, have you ever seen one of those big wind turbines up on the hills? What do they make with those wind turbines? So they use wind to make what? Electricity. So they're taking one form of energy, the wind blowing, transforming it into another form of energy. I couldn't just like hold my phone up to the wind, right, to recharge it. Does the wind have energy?
No.
Yeah. But not a form that my phone can use. But if that wind energy is transformed into electricity, then I can use the electricity to plug my phone in and use that. Same sort of true in living things. They can't use the energy that's stored in glucose, but respiration takes that energy and changes it to a form they can use. That form is called ATP. So again, the reactants in respiration are glucose and oxygen. The products are ATP, water, and carbon dioxide.
Well, we need to know that.
Yep. And so the ultimate goal of respiration is to produce energy in the form of ATP.
Like H2O is part of products, right?
H2O is a product of respiration. So again, we can think about these processes and think about, okay, in photosynthesis, where does the light come from? Sun. Where does the water come from in plants? How do they get water?
Soil.
What part of the plant? The roots take water into the soil. Where do they get carbon dioxide? In the air. How about this? In respiration, where does the glucose come from? Foods. Where does the oxygen come from? The air. All right, if we look at this and think about these two processes, photosynthesis and respiration, they are very well related because the end products of photosynthesis, oxygen and glucose, are used in respiration. And the end products of respiration are what? What's released in respiration? Water and carbon dioxide. That's used in photosynthesis. So you have this cycle where the end products of one process are the reactants of the other process. Okay, last slide here. So, I flip over to this last slide. So I don't want you to look back. Let's go over this. Don't look back on our previous slide.
Wait, we're missing.
Oh, I know it.
All right,
I know it.
photosynthesis. Haley, give me one reactant. Don't look back. No looking back. One reactant in photosynthesis.
I
Light.
actually had a question for you, Mr. Ross.
Oh, yeah?
Wait, you slammed the door on there?
Oh, I just thought the door was ajar. I was just shutting it. I'm sorry.
You thought it was a jar?
Yes.
Oh, it's not a jar.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
Wooden
Thank you.
door. You wanna ask me the question still? Oh,
Oh, well. So yes, we start with the light in photosynthesis. Give me another reactant in photosynthesis without looking. Micah.
H2O.
H2O, and the third one, Abby?
Like CO2.
CO2, yes. Carbon dioxide, water, and light. Those are the reactants. Those are the things needed for photosynthesis. And what does it produce? Man, give me one. What does photosynthesis produce? Don't look, don't look, don't look. Don't look at it. Photosynthesis produces two things. Glucose, and what's the other, Gavin? Oxygen. Glucose and oxygen.
How do you expect it to put glucose in that kind of
What
I
is
did
it?
it.
What is it?
Wait, how come there's no?
Hold on.
I did.
It's
C6, H, what? 12.
Oh, I need to write that.
You should know it.
First.
So the overall idea, energy from sunlight is changed into chemical bond energy, and that happens in what organelle of a plant? What organelle? Chloroplast. Respiration. Give me a reactant in respiration. Ben, what's one thing that's needed here? Glucose. What's the other one? All right. Glucose? Nope. Here? Yes. Oxygen. Good. And what's one of the things produced, James? In respiration? It produces water. What else? Soraya? CO2. And the important thing, Matt? ATP. ATP, CO2, and H2O. So respiration, what organelle does it happen in? I didn't really mention it yet. But it's producing energy. So what organelle would that be? Natalie? No? Producing energy?
Oh, it starts with an M. Mitochondria.
Mitochondria. And it's the main source of energy for all living things. All right, last section here. Again, it's just review. It's the same stuff we talked about. Yes. So photosynthesis. Who do I need to get here? Photosynthesis. Okay. Grace, what's one thing that it requires? That it needs. So if you look at these, the things on the left side are what it requires.
Light.
Light. Give me another thing, Ben.
Water.
Water. And the third thing, James?
Oxygen.
No? That it requires, it needs. All right? Carbon dioxide. Light, water, carbon dioxide are needed. What is needed in respiration, Zach?
Glucose.
And?
O2.
Yes, glucose and oxygen are what's needed, whatever is required in respiration. What are the end products of photosynthesis? Connor? Yes, the products of photosynthesis. Yeah, tell me. And photosynthesis, the end products are glucose and oxygen, yes. Nathan, how about the end products of respiration?
APT, water, and carbon dioxide.
Correct. ATP, carbon dioxide, and water. So the main purpose of photosynthesis for a plant is to do what? Tatum? Make food, make
Glucose.
glucose. The main purpose of respiration, Natalie?
Make ATP.
Make ATP or energy, yes, good. What organelle do they happen in? Haley, how about photosynthesis? What organelle?
Chlorophyll.
Correct. How about respiration, Micah?
Mitochondria.
Yes. How about which types of organisms, which types of living things does photosynthesis happen in? Ben?
Light.
What type of living things?
Plants.
Plants. There are a couple other things we'll talk about eventually, but for now we'll say plants. Now,
I told you.
Hold on. usually the first person to answer this next question gets it wrong. Let's see. Kendall, what type of living things does respiration happen in?
Well, now I think we answered.
Well, just give me what you're thinking.
Animals.
That's wrong. That's what somebody always says. But it actually is more than just animals. Because in photosynthesis, plants make what? No. They make glucose. But is that glucose is like the wind, right? What do they then have to do with the glucose? Turn it, what type of energy? What? ATP. So how do they do that? With respiration. So plants do both. Yes, all animals and plants both do respiration.
All their answers were partially correct.
Yeah. That's a common, most people say plants, well the other must just be animals, but it's not. Plants go through respiration and photosynthesis. Okay, got a nice treat for you guys. Oh yeah. It is not just a video,
Oh no.
it's a song. It's a science song. Everyone loves science songs.
Oh, is it the rock cycle song?
No,
Is
it's
this
not.
our rock cycle song? Oh, I can't stand that song.
Yes.